Welcome to Subconscious Conversations, where we take a look into the intricate world of the subconscious mind and how to heal the body, mind, heart, and spirit through its wisdom and guidance. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Brielle, and I'm the sole practitioner at Springseed Wellness, where I practice the energy medicine techniques of emotion code, body code, and belief code, which were created by the wonderful Dr. Bradley Nelson. In today's episode, I will be talking about the history of energy healing. And I wanted to talk about this subject because I think there's still a lot of misguided views about energy healing. And I find myself oftentimes feeling ridiculed or misunderstood and sometimes even demonized for the work I do. And it's really kind of frustrating for me. So I wanted to explore the subject from a historical context to help me understand different views and open my perspective. This isn't something I bring up very often, and maybe I should, because maybe it would give me more credibility to some people. But I do have a bachelor's degree in biology, and while the majority of my schooling was focused on environmental studies, I also did take a bunch of classes focused on anatomy, physiology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, history, and arts as well. So it really was a very well-rounded education, and as such has allowed me to view energy healing from a wide range of perspectives. And I do view myself as a scientist, and I believe that entails having a balance between an open mind and a skeptical mind. I'm a person who will believe in the possibility of just about anything, but I also require a fair amount of evidence in order for me to believe in the actuality of something. And that evidence better be approached from a very thoughtful, well-rounded scientific studies. And maybe that's why it took me so long to actually get into energy medicine. I've been exposed to it my entire life, but I didn't actually pay too close attention to it. It was just sort of a thing that was always being practiced in one form or another by one family member or another, but it was never like a central focus for me. And I think maybe that was the skeptical side of my mind, not knowing how to understand it yet. So even though I was very open to it, I didn't completely accept it as part of my truth until I could understand the science and experience the evidence for myself. But now, having the scientific understanding and having conducted blind studies with this work, with consent, of course, as I described in episode 5, but I've gained all the evidence I need to fully believe in the validity of it. But I also still understand why it can be difficult for people to accept it as being true to themselves if they have never experienced it. And while that skepticism is a little frustrating for me personally, I think it's also a very healthy thing, as long as it's balanced out with open-mindedness. So on that note, let's explore. So energy medicine seems to be thought of by a lot of people as kind of a new age thing, but actually it has been around since the dawn of man and has been practiced all over the world, all throughout human history. In Africa, the Egyptians practiced surgeries, dentistry, herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, and hygiene practices as healing methods back in 3000 BC. In Europe, the Romans practiced herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, and believed in healing powers of sacred spaces, and that was in 800 BC. And then the Greeks used the same healing methods as well, and they also used preventative measures against illness, such as exercise, nutrition, and even artistic therapy. And this was during the same time around 800 BC. And in Asia, the Indians were also utilizing herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, diet, lifestyle, cultural practices, exercise, meditation, breath work, massage, acupuncture, cupping, and crystals for healing. And that was in about 3000 BC. In about 500 BC, the Japanese used herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, purification rituals, acupuncture, massage, and believed in the healing powers of nature. Just think of those beautiful, calming Japanese gardens you always see pictures of. And in around 400 BC in Tibet, they utilized herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, meditation, diet, and lifestyle, and they believed in the healing powers of sacred landscapes and nature, and they focused on balance of body, mind, and spirit. And during the same time in Mongolia, they were also using herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, acupuncture, massage, bone setting, meditation, diet, and drums and singing. And in about 300 BC, the Chinese were practicing surgery, herbal remedies, acupuncture, and they outlined the energy centers in the body and the energy pathways in the body, and they believed in balancing those energies for optimal health. In America, around 2000 BC, the Mayans were utilizing herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, cleansing ceremonies, acupuncture, massage, music and dance, and they believed in interpreting signs from nature to guide wellness. And they believed in the connection to the cosmos having an impact on health as well. The Incans used herbal remedies, spiritual rituals, exercise, cleansing ceremonies, and believed that health was obtained by being in balance and in harmony with nature. And indigenous tribes all over America also practiced all these same methods to achieve wellness, and they still do to this day through their strong cultural heritage. So you can see a very clear common theme from all over the world from the beginning of time, where people believed very strongly in the interconnectedness between all things through a unifying and universal energy, and the realization that one needs to achieve balance with the heart, mind, body, and spirit in order to attain health and wellness. And you might be wondering, well, if so many cultures from the beginning of time understood these simple concepts of unifying energy and needing to find balance in respect to every aspect of your being, then where and why did we start getting so detached from this basic understanding? Well, to understand that, we need to also take a look at the history of Western medicine. So around the year 1004, we were starting to understand the concept of infectious diseases and how to use sanitation to prevent the spread of illness. Although, a little bit of a side note, I did read somewhere that the person who first suggested that they practice hand washing in hospital settings was actually locked up in an asylum for being crazy, because he just had the nerve to suggest something so simple and logical. But the masses at that time didn't understand the concept of infectious organisms, so they just thought he was crazy. Now, I don't remember who, where, or when that was. I just remember reading it at some point. Anyway, back on track. In the 1300s, we started to understand chemistry and physics and how those relate to the body, and advancements were being made in medical and scientific technology, such as the microscope. And so, as our scientific knowledge of the body and of the world around us was advancing, new concepts were being introduced. And One that I believe had a huge impact on the trajectory of Western medicine was in the 1600s when French philosopher and mathematician Rene Descartes introduced the idea that the mind and body were separate and that the human body is basically just a mechanical object that conforms only to the laws of matter. But again, another little side note, here's the thing. Our understanding of the laws of matter is kind of an evolving thing in and of itself as we gain a little bit more knowledge of physics through technological advancement. But anyway, back to our history lesson. This was a time when humans were making all sorts of advancements in scientific inquest, and a multitude of different theories and concepts were being explored all over the world. But this was also a time when there were a lot of religious tensions, and anything outside of the mainstream Christian views was being demonized and labeled as evil. And there were massive witch hunts happening all throughout Europe, which started in about 1400 and continued on for nearly 400 years. And during this time, over 100,000 people were accused of witchcraft, and roughly 40,000 people were executed because of it. And most of them were women, and in some areas, many of them practiced natural healing of some sort. And then in Salem, Massachusetts, between 1692 and 1693, there was the famous witch trials. And during that time, over 20 people were put to death for being witches, and again, most of them were women. Now, there's a lot of complexity to the witch hunts in Europe and America, but mostly, in my opinion, it boils down to either political conflicts, religious conflicts, gender conflicts, or social status conflicts. And what I mean by that is the accusations were impossible to prove, and the trials were incredibly unfair, and therefore it kind of ended up being the easiest way to wipe out whoever was perceived as a threat. All you had to do was accuse them of witchcraft and make up some fantastical story, and your threat was, or competition would then be removed either through imprisonment, death, or exile. And it was total and absolute BS garbage. And at this point in history, I think we completely recognize that. But there's still some lingering undertones of that fearful mindset that still seem to be prevalent today. But anyway, there was a lot of fear being drummed up around the world about natural healing methods, and a lot of new scientific and philosophical theories being introduced, and a lot of things were changing very quickly. There was a lot of advancing medical techniques and technology, and many different medical colleges in Europe, Canada, and America, and many of which focused on natural healing techniques. And in 1847, the American Medical Association, or the AMA, was founded. And then from 1861 to 1865, there was the Revolutionary War, which brought forth a lot of medical breakthroughs as well, basically just due to desperation, really. And by the early 1900s, we were starting to get a little bit more organized with the structure of our healthcare in America, and the first government-run hospitals were opened, and the AMA created the Council on Medical Education. But there still weren't any formal standards in place at most of the colleges. So the skill and knowledge of the doctors coming out of those schools varied quite a bit. And in 1910, the Carnegie Foundation, with backing from the AMA, hired Abraham Flexner to study and write a report on the quality of the medical education in America and Canada. And although Flexner wasn't a doctor, he was very well educated. He had been a former teacher, and he was a published critic on the education system in general. So he was chosen for this particular study. And his report at the end was very damning and cited that there was thousands of graduates from medical colleges flooding the communities with very disparaging and inadequate understanding of medicine. And he had traveled abroad, and so a lot of his recommendations to improve the medical education in America were actually based on the very structured German medical education system. And this brought forth a lot of changes to the American medical education system, and most medical colleges were actually shut down. And anything that deviated from the mechanical standardized approach was deemed invalid. And these changes are the reason why we have such revered medical care in the United States, and why we also have such great medical advancements all the time. So it has brought about a lot of really positive changes in our medical system. But there's also a downside to that, where we've kind of turned our backs on all the other beneficial practices that are out there. And so from 1910 on through today, there's kind of been this battle between Western medicine and natural medicine. And in fact, in 1963, the AMA established a committee on quackery, whose focus was solely to discredit alternative practitioners. Now, today, thanks to technological advancements making more in-depth scientific study into quantum physics possible, I think natural healing methods are finally starting to gain back some respect and validity, but there's still a lot of negative views and or misunderstanding of them as well. People are very threatened by anything out of the norm or anything that's not tactile to the main senses. And I find myself still very fearful of people thinking that I'm crazy or thinking that I'm practicing something evil. But the way I see it, from a spiritual aspect, I'm asking for divine guidance and divine protection for both myself and my client. And my heart and my intentions are pure. The only purpose I have with this work is to help alleviate the suffering of others. So, no, there's absolutely nothing evil here. I truly believe that it's our Creator's way of healing those who are open to it, and bringing them into more connection to, I'll use my ancestors' phrase here, the all-power. And I just feel so blessed to be able to act as a conduit during that process. And from a physical standpoint, it is a very tactile experience for me, anyway, as well. I can feel the energy changes as I work on somebody, and it's just a really incredible feeling, both physically and spiritually, to be able to help somebody heal their pain and connect to their spirit. And it really is just something so special, and it's nothing to be feared or disrespected. And from a scientific standpoint, even through my skeptical mind, and even though I don't have the most advanced degree possible, I have enough experience and enough scientific knowledge to know that this work and the science behind it are very real. And I truly believe that both Western medicine and alternative medicine can coexist. And I believe it's the combination and the balance of both of those that's the key to optimal health. And this was a very eye-opening and also admittedly overwhelming research project for me. But I think it really helped me sort through some things and open my perspective. And I hope it did the same for you as well. I really have a much deeper respect now for our journey as humans, and I love seeing all the different ideas and perspectives throughout history and how they've changed and shaped our journey and how far we've all come because of those. And I'm so glad you joined me for this episode. And please be sure to join me for next episode where I will discuss my functions and limitations within this work and what the client's responsibilities are. For example, when to seek my help versus when to seek help from a medical professional, and taking personal responsibility for your part in your own healing process. So, see you then. If you would like to set up a session with me to experience this work for yourself, please go to springseedwellness.com. If you would like to find a practitioner in your local area, please go to discoverhealing.com. And please always feel free to reach out with any questions or specific topics you would like me to address. See you next episode.